Well, what's up? Welcome, rock and rollers. Doc Reno, the Ultimate Rock Podcast. This is our 5th episode. We kind of patched this one together real quick because, unfortunately, we lost Eddie Van Halen this week. So before the end of the week, we're doing this on the Friday after the passing of Eddie Van Halen. We wanted to put together a podcast, and we have a very special guest that we'll tell you about in just a second here. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's been in touch with us. And you can listen to this podcast on the iHeartRadio app. I work for iHeartRadio and all the major podcasting platforms. It's doing very, very well, and we're very excited about it, and we're glad you're enjoying it. The stories and the recollections and basically the whole enchilada. And between my co-host Denny Somach and myself, we've been doing rock radio and producing shows. And Denny is an infamous author. He has a new book on the Beatles that just came out a few weeks back. And between the two of us, we have a lot of rock and roll friends, and we wanted to do something on Eddie Van Halen today. And let's get right to it.
Yeah, so I wanted to get somebody who really knew him. I mean, not just all these tributes and people are coming. This guy really knew him. He was an executive. He's been an executive in the music industry for many decades, a real veteran. I first met him at Warner Brothers Records in the 70s, and he was what you call an artist representative, which meant he was responsible for certain artists on the label, everything that they did, from live concerts to radio interviews to in-store when they used to have those, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, his name is Ted Cohen, and let's get him on the phone and see if he can tell us some inside stories. So, Ted, are you there?
I'm here. What would you like to know?
Fantastic. I just gave you an introduction that you were what's called an artist rep guy.
It was artist development.
Artist development.
It was artist development.
Could you explain?
Yeah, so basically, the label, you had what you call the A&R guys, artist and repertoire. And the A&R guy is the guy who usually signed you. So if you're a band in Philly, what was it, the A's?
Right.
Was that band?
The A's, the Hooters, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, whoever the A&R guy was, the band sends their tape in, or the manager does, and the band gets signed. What artist development did, and we were fairly unique at Warner, was we worked with artists from the time they were signed through when they went out on their first tours. We worked on not helping them break a record, have a hit song, but basically establish a persona and establish a career.
Yeah.
So that they had a career beyond having a hit record. So,
and very few labels.
I always give is
I'm sorry. I was going to say very few labels had that philosophy. I think it was
like
basically Warner Brothers and A&M were the two, correct?
Yeah, that was about it. That was about it. Me and Bob Garcia at A&M.
Right.
And very similar because if you know Al Marks, who used to be at A&M, Al tutored under Bob, and pretty much we weren't artist relations. There was another term called artist relations. That was, go to the show in New York, after the show, take the band out to dinner and tell them how good they were.
Right.
Yeah.
My job was to tell the band how good they might not have been, or tell them they were good, depending. So I was assigned between 1974 and 1984. I was assigned a series of baby bands to work with.
Like who?
And my baby bands were Van Halen, Fleetwood Mac, Prince, Talking Heads, Pretenders. Those are the main ones.
Pretty good list. All right, so let's get right to it. We got to get some Eddie Van Halen stories. Tell us something that we don't know and nobody else knows.
You got it. Well, we were in. So I started working with them in '78. We met for the first time at a restaurant in Burbank called Le Petit Chateau. The band showed up for lunch, and we all had lunch in Burbank and then drove over to the Whiskey. And at 3 in the afternoon, the band performed like they were performing at the Whiskey at 11 o'clock at night, and it was just inspiring.
Really?
Wow.
So we then end up going out. Frank Barcelona from Premier Talent, who
was their agent.
Van Halen had signed as an agent, put the band with Journey and Ronnie Montrose to go out on tour together. So the tour package was Van Halen, then Ronnie Montrose, then Journey closing, and it was apparent after the first night that even Ronnie Montrose couldn't follow Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, right. And ironically, Sammy Hagar, who wasn't in the band at the time, but he came out of Montrose.
Right.
He came out of Montrose, Montrose was the band, and Ronnie Montrose was Ronnie just doing an instrumental thing. There was no vocalist.
Right.
But Eddie was just amazing. People were blown away every night. And of course, David was an amazing frontman, David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
But Eddie was Eddie was the heart and soul of it. And I was very lucky because I only worked with the band. I worked with the band in a total of 8 years. But it was at the beginning and in the middle and up to them, ascending to the top. And they never seemed bored. They never seemed like, oh yeah, this is okay. I was lucky enough to be with them when everything, even, opening for the Rolling Stones and then headlining their own stadium shows, they were still, excited about all of it. But I think the most memorable time for me was we were in Las Vegas at the Aladdin Hotel, and we were playing the Aladdin Theater, and it happened that Rush was there at the same time. So Rush played on, I think, a Tuesday night, and Van Halen played on a Wednesday night. We went to Rush's show. Rush came to Van Halen's show. But after the Van Halen show, Eddie gave me a buzz and said, "Can I come over?" And we were in my room at the Aladdin, and it was the week that nobody will remember. There's an artist named Wayne Newton. I know Denny will know who Wayne Newton is. Wayne Newton bought the Aladdin Hotel.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're sitting in my room, and my room happens to be right outside the window where they're taking down the Aladdin Hotel sign and putting up the new sign. Again, Las Vegas neon signs are enormous anyway, but they took down the Aladdin sign, and they're putting up Wayne Newton's Aladdin Hotel. And Eddie and I had a bottle of Stolichnaya, and we proceeded between about 1 a.m. to about 6 a.m. as they're hanging the new sign, talking about how it was, because this is 82.
Okay.
So we're 4 years into, this meteoric rise, and he's talking about, how it's been, without going too deep into it. There were some concerns of whether he should have gotten married or not. It wasn't so much Valerie; it's just how did marriage affect the band?
Yes, exactly. It didn't match their image.
It didn't match the image. And Michael was already married when the band got signed,
right?
And Michael and Susan were really sweet, but so it didn't really change Michael's life that much. But Eddie getting married in the middle of it, there were a lot of us, I mean, me included, that considered Valerie to be the Yoko Ono of Van Halen.
Oh, wow.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
In that, she continually was stressing to Eddie, and we would hear it, that, the band's called Van Halen, not David Lee Roth, and
oh, God,
how important Eddie was. And it was interesting because during this 3-4 hour period in the middle of the night, he was just expressing that, maybe he should have waited, and maybe, how much he loved the band, and the band were his brothers and whatever. And, within the next year, you started to see it coming apart. 83, there was a lot of division, and by 84, right after the end of the Jump 1984 album tour, David left the band.
Right.
Noel Monk, the manager, was let go, and Sammy came on board. But I would see Eddie after that, and he still had that twinkle in his eye. The twinkle was diminishing a bit, but he still was this boyish, happy guy. He never showed any sense of ego in terms of, I'm not going to do that interview, or I don't want to meet that person, or I don't want to take a picture, or I don't want to, whatever it was, he and everybody else remained, very enamored by everything. And so it was a great experience. And as Denny will tell you, I'd worked with Little Feat, and I'd worked with Prince and all the other artists that I mentioned, but there was something about watching Eddie and the guys grow into who they became without their heads getting twisted.
Yeah.
And, they were always really nice. And Eddie, initially people were going, he's no Eric Clapton, or he's no, Richie Blackmore, or he's no Jimmy Page. He was, and he proved it. And I think we're seeing it this week with the accolades that are coming out and all the tributes. It was just wonderful. So, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. We did some funny stuff in many cities, including Cleveland, including Philly.
Yeah.
it's not an Eddie Van Halen story, but Denny will appreciate this. We were at Bruce Springsteen at the Spectrum,
right?
And I'm there with Eddie's there, David's there, and David starts hitting on Joyce.
Oh, right. Joyce Heiser. Joyce Heiser.
Exactly.
Sure.
Now, who's that?
At the time that Joyce is dating Bruce.
Joyce Heiser, I was a music director at a Philadelphia radio station, and Joyce was dating a sound man who did the sound for all our radio concerts.
Okay.
So she'd come by, hang out at the station. I'd give her records, and we'd just hang out. And one day she decided she was going to be an actress and go to California. And she did it. Next thing I know, I'm watching L.A. Law, and there she is.
Wow.
Right?
Right. So we're up in the press box at the Spectrum, which was infamous is where everybody hung out. And David starts hitting on Joyce, and I'm trying to explain that she's dating Bruce. And then David wants to go backstage and meet Bruce, and I'm going, God, I hope Joyce didn't say anything, but she didn't. She was a sweetheart. But I mean, the guys were wonderful, and the guys, they just remained, in terms of being friends, not emotionally or intellectually. It was like they were still a high school band.
Right.
They were just really nice people, and it just evolved. The shows got bigger, the productions got bigger, the grosses got bigger, but their heads didn't get bigger.
Yeah. Well, listen,
we're on the line with Ted Cohen from Warner Brothers Records.
Really appreciate taking time out, Ted. I'm sure this is probably a tough weekend for you just to reminisce and think about what's going on. Yeah, obviously, you look at Facebook and everything; it's the dominant story.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So,
well, I appreciate sharing with you, and I appreciate including me and hearing a Cleveland voice.
Hey, I just want to tell you real quick, Ted. This is Doc. My Van Halen story, I get asked all the time when I first, after this happened, when was the first time I had a chance to see Van Halen? They opened up for Black Sabbath at the Richfield Coliseum. You were probably there.
Yes, I was.
And
I was.
And even Ozzy Osbourne said that band just blew us off the stage. That's how good they were.
It was amazing. I think the most telling thing was I got a call this week. I'll end it with this, but I got a call this week from a guy named Pat Morrow, who was Journey's co-manager with Herbie Herbert.
Sure, I remember Pat. Yeah, bald-headed
they
guy.
Called him Bubba, and Bubba called me, and he goes, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm okay." He goes, "This is a tough one for you, isn't it?" Now, this was from 1978, and I stayed friends with Journey for years. But Pat calling up to go, "Are you okay?" I mean, it was a really tight-knit bunch, and he knew it, and he watched it when just the 3 months we were out on tour together. And out of that, Pat and I have stayed friends over the years. And it is about the people. I mean, the musicianship was unbelievable, but it was also, what a great person he was. So thanks for including me.
Oh, thanks for being on, Ted.
Appreciate your time, big time.
That's Ted Cohen.
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's Ted Cohen.
You got it. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Okay.
All right, you too.
Worked with Eddie Van Halen and, of course, the whole band, and that's good to get real insight there because nobody else has those stories.
Let me ask you, the first time you heard Van Halen or saw Van Halen or just heard about Van Halen, do you remember that time?
Yeah, I was working in a radio station, and it was 78 or 79 when it came. Maybe it was the fall of 78 or early 79. The first record came out, and I said, "What is that?" You really got me.
Eruption.
Whoa. Eruption, and then You Really Got Me, and then, that was it. The whole thing went on. I could tell. I hadn't seen reaction like that probably since the third Rush album or something.
Yeah.
Where people instantly called up and go, "What is that?"
I love what Ray Davies said about, he said Van Halen did You Really Got Me better than the Kinks did, and Eddie's felt like, he's just being nice.
Yeah.
But Ray Davies was serious about that. So you're listening to the Ultimate Rock Podcast. We just kind of patched this and threw this together. Normally we play a little longer to put something together for you. But thank you, Denny Somach, for finding some of the sound clips we're about to hear for this podcast. We lost Eddie Van Halen a couple days ago, and we just got off the phone with Ted Cohen, who spent a good decade with Van Halen, working with Warner Brothers Records. And when when he was trying to explain what he did with the band, basically being in the radio business 30 plus years, we're talking about a guy that would have to bring Eddie Van Halen and the band to see me while I'm on the air. A guy that would have to go back in the day to the record stores and stand there while they signed all the autographs and take all the pictures. Basically, a professional babysitter. Mm-hmm. And some of these guys, especially a guy like David Lee Roth, they're going to be a handful, right, Denny?
More than a handful.
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
So let's see.
Yeah,
let's
so
get to our first clip.
This is a special podcast just devoted to Eddie Van Halen and the other members of Van Halen. Before we start, Eddie really sums up his life in music in a real short little thing here, which I want to start off with. So hit it, Doug.
Practice to me is a word like, you have to do this now, like tied up to a chair and you got to, whatever. I don't look at it that way. I enjoy it. I'm obsessed with music, I just enjoy it.
Anyway, that sort of sums it all up. He's obsessed with music. That was his whole life, and guitar really was his instrument and his first love, and we all are a lot better off for having him in our world. So anyway, Doc, the first time you heard Van Halen?
The first time I'd never heard them on the radio before I saw them in concert.
Oh, okay.
So the only other time I could say that is I had a chance to see AC/DC open up for Thin Lizzy at the Palace Theater in downtown Cleveland. And I went to the show with one of my high school buddies, Steve Hamp. And first time, there's only two guitar players I could say that I watched them in concert. I was completely blown away to this very day. That was Eddie Van Halen first. Because when they went off and then we were getting ready for Black Sabbath, I looked at my buddies and I'm like, I've never seen a guy play guitar like that. I was floored. And then the other time was when I watched Angus. And for their first, I think we talked about this off air, I joked and I was like, is this putting on the hits? This guy's guitar's not even plugged in. And for 4 or 5 songs, I thought he was just like me in my bedroom rocking out to a Judas Priest album or something and playing air guitar. And then I realized that Angus was really playing, and we're talking obviously about two of the biggest guitar monsters of all time. So that was the first time I had heard Van Halen.
Okay, well, I figured I just, we only had like 48 hours to put this together, which is enough because I went home and went to the archive. And
you're a wizard, man.
AVH and EVH and DLR. This is the only band that's like 3 initials. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So I pulled some stuff, and I figured, let's just focus on these interviews are mostly from the early 80s, the mid 80s, and the mid 90s. So it covers a good portion of their career. So I figured we'd just pull out some nuggets and give you a little idea. Here's Alex and Eddie talking about the origin of Van Halen as a band. So.
Actually, it's really a typical story. We got together in Jamaica while we were all vacationing. No, we were all in different bands. Ed and I have always played together for as long as we've been playing. Dave was in a different band, and Mike was in his own little band, in his own little world, in Disney World or something. And what happens at a certain age, you got to make a decision as to what you're going to do. Most of the people that we were hanging around with at the age of maybe 16 or 17 decided to become either doctors, lawyers, drug addicts,
tennis players,
right.
Beach bums,
and
stuff like
what
that.
basically happened is we were all playing in the same area, and it was like a distilling process. What was left was Dave, Ed, me, and Mike. And we decided, well, let's make a go of this because we enjoy it.
Yeah, and lucky us that they were the last ones. They were like the last scraps around, and we end up getting one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time. I will say this, Eddie is very shy.
Yeah.
And when you listen to an interview, whether it's one of ours or anybody else, when you listen to an interview of the Van Halen brothers, 75 to 80% of the conversation is going to be coming from Alex. It's just Eddie was always a shy guy. Now we have a clip from Michael Anthony.
Yeah, no. Before that, here's Alex and Eddie.
You have another one. Okay.
They're going to talk about Eddie, and then Michael Anthony is going to come in.
Okay, perfect.
Talk about Eddie. So this is Alex and David Lee Roth first on Eddie.
There is, I think, a certain a certain gift that you're endowed with, And Ed just happened to utilize what he can naturally do. He happens to be very quick in the fingers. He happens to have a very good sense of direction as far as musical tastes go and song structure. And, if you play it for 8 hours a day, you're bound to come out with something.
Edward lives and breathes by his guitar. He always has. people said, "Wow, has Edward changed, since he got married?" And I said, "No, to tell you the truth, whenever we're on the airplane, Edward's in the back with his guitar, Whenever we're on a bus, Edward's in the back with his guitar. Whenever we're in the hotel, he's upstairs in his room with his guitar or some other people playing guitar. I said, the only time he's not with his guitar is when he's sleeping."
When you listen to David Lee Roth, he easily could have been in Fast Times at Ridgemont High with that voice, I swear to God. All right, let's go to Michael Anthony now, Doug.
Well, when it comes to music, Ed's a workaholic. He's always fiddling with something, writing something, or whatever. It's great playing with him because it's a lot of times I got a lot of freedom to play what I want to play. Other times I'm very restricted because, especially live when he plays, goes off on one of his solos. Sometimes he goes nuts, and so I've got to sit there and just hold the bass down, and every now and then all of a sudden sneak a couple of notes in, or a couple of things in, but he's great to work with.
One thing about Van Halen to me, they've sold over 80 million albums worldwide. Should be like 180 million, you would think. They're one of only 5 bands that have 2 albums that are diamond status. And what diamond status is over 10 million in sales. There's not too many bands that can say this, but Van Halen's first album and 1984 both have sold over 10 million copies worldwide and inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007. And the Rock Hall has a requirement you have to have 25 years after your first album comes out to be eligible. Like here in 2020, the Foo Fighters came out with their first album in July of 95, so they're eligible to get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I think they're going to get in right off the bat. And very few bands do, but Van Halen had to wait a little bit. And even when they did, Alex and Eddie did not go. Michael Anthony and Sammy Hagar were the only 2 that showed up for the ceremony back in 2007. Obviously, Van Halen, one of the most powerful, energetic live bands.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times when there's certain bands that, like, when I know they're playing, I know this is going to be really, really special. Like, I'm not trying to be corny here, but like the hair would stand up on my forearms because I knew this is Van freaking Halen that's playing here tonight. I cannot wait to see David Lee Roth do a seat jump or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy these stories that we have because I think we've pulled some really cool things. But one of the things about Van Halen and the reason that they really gelled was their musical tastes were varied enough. Actually, David Lee Roth told this to me one time. Play that, will you, Doug?
Our influences are so varied as individuals. The 4 of us are just worlds apart. What I like in terms of music, Edward can't stand. Edward goes to the Roxy and he jams with Alan Holdsworth, and I listen to Bob Marley, and it's 2 different things, and that both are represented in our music, whether it's the way Edward plays the guitar or the way I sing, and it defies categorization that way.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. That's David Lee Roth, that unmistakable voice. So we are paying tribute to Eddie Van Halen with this podcast number 5 of the Ultimate Rock Podcast. On each episode, I'm joined here with rock historian and producer Denny Somach, my close friend. And we present what we like to do. And when we first talked about putting this podcast together is that we could tell our stories, and we have plenty. But we also really want you to hear from the actual artists. We want you to hear Eddie Van Halen. We want you to hear Alex and Michael and David Lee. And that's what this podcast is all about. And today we're paying tribute to Eddie Van Halen. I'm still, in a way, Denny, I'm stunned that we lost him. He was only 65, way too young.
Well, I'd like to, first of all, most people, I think a lot of people know this, most people know Eddie Van Halen's guitar work from Beat It. On the Michael Jackson album, Thriller.
Which he never got paid for.
Steve Lukather plays the original lead, one of the rhythm guitar, I'm sorry. And Quincy Jones said, now, how can we really rock this up and give it a rock image? And he picked up the phone and he called Eddie Van Halen, and he thought, it's not Quincy Jones. Hung up. Somebody else had a call. Saying, no, this is really Quincy Jones. Hey, it's Quincy Jones. I'd like to come down and listen to this song that I'm working on with Michael Jackson and see if you would be interested in putting a lead guitar on it.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Yeah, and he did it as a favor.
Yeah.
Never got paid for it. To this very day, never got paid for it.
Didn't ask to get paid.
And he also completely changed the song. Quincy and Michael gave him the tune. He listened to it. He's like, no. Let me rework this.
Right.
He reworked it and played it for Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson said, I love it.
Right.
And they rolled with it. And then, and now that he's gone, I mean, everybody's bringing that up.
Right.
I understand. It's a big deal. It's Michael Jackson. I get it. Yeah. But, when you're paying homage to Eddie Van Halen with Beat It, come on now.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Let's
anyway,
let's call it like it is.
We're going to wrap up, and I'm going to do something that I wouldn't normally do. This is a piece I got from my friend. My friend Mark Raz, who was a disc jockey in New York at the same station that you're on now. As a matter of fact.
I'm on Q1043 in New York City. Yes, indeed.
And this is 1995. He was pretty friendly with Eddie, and Eddie called him right around the time he had that hip injury, and eventually he had to get a hip replacement.
99.
Yeah, and he talks very candid. He talks about going into rehab, which. Mark
rare.
goes, are you kidding? When was that? He goes, 7 months ago. And he tells the whole story.
Yeah.
And I've never heard it told like that. So you're going to hear it in Eddie's own words.
Okay.
And that's sort of where we're going to end today. And
okay.
I hope you enjoyed what we were able to put together. I hope you enjoyed the stories.
Quick as we put it together.
Yeah. And join us in the future. Doc, tell them how to get a hold of us.
We have a Facebook page, thanks to our producer, Doug Kaplan. We're also on Denny Somach's social media and my social media, Doc Reno, DOCRENO. We're posting things about podcasts, about where you could find us. I can tell you right off the bat, we're on about 10 platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. So the iHeartRadio app, you can find Ultimate Rock Podcast or any of the major players out there. So let's roll this. This is Eddie Van Halen being brutally honest about what he was going through and talking about his demons here. Doug?
Eddie, man, what's new?
I just went out and bought myself a cane because I've been using crutches, man. My hip's all f***ed up.
From what?
I have a vascular necrosis, same thing that Bo Jackson had. Need a hip replacement, yeah.
Oh, dude.
I remember watching
a cane. Are you going to have it on stage?
The cane?
Can you imagine that? Here comes Eddie out on stage with this cane.
Well, I'm hobbling, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I it's just from years of jumping on stage and drinking, and not feeling the damage I was doing. I'm almost 7 months sober now, so the pain is just getting worse and worse.
I want to ask you about that. 7 months sober. That's about the same time you got your hair cut.
Oh yeah, I did it all at the same time.
So was that Jim Kelly thing a lot of crap? Or?
Oh yeah, that was just a joke. Put it this way, I had two answers, a long one and a short one. And the long one I said in Rolling Stone. The short one was just to get the press off my ass. And he just said, it was a bet,
Yeah. So how you feeling?
Outside of that, I'm playing great. I feel incredible, and I'm back, man. I'm alive.
So what do you say about those 10 years when you were drinking on stage and all that stuff?
Oh, it was more than 10. It was more like 20.
All right, so 20 years. I mean,
smoking.
I still played well, but I think, it's all kind of foggy, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Well, what made you change your ways, Edward Van Halen?
Well, it all started with the death of our manager,
Ed Leffler. Ed Leffler was a great guy.
Yeah, and he really was. He was actually more of a friend and a father figure to all of us than he was a manager. But it started with his death in October, and then we were all pretty much in shock. We tend to gravitate, whenever you're in shock or you're mourning, you tend to kind of gravitate towards something which is for us making music. And so Alex and I kind of locked ourselves in the studio and started writing for the new record. And subconsciously, I think some of the tunes ended up with a darker kind of vibe to them because of Ed's death. But I don't know, I kind of hit a real emotional bottom, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I noticed that there's a little bit more spirituality to this record. I noticed that there's some Buddhist chanting on there on the Seventh Seal and some other stuff. And is that all part of what you were going through?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it wasn't conscious, but it was definitely the mood we were all in.
Right.
And for me personally, I just hit a real bottom. I was waking up every morning with the true alcoholic shakes and the dry heaves and everything, and that was happening for a few years. Actually, I would have to drink a 6-pack of beer just to feel normal, to stop the shakes.
Wow.
And my body just couldn't handle it anymore. So I shaved my head because I was so frustrated, and pissed off at myself that I was literally pulling the hair out of my head. So I grabbed my Norelco shaver and did a butcher job myself.
What, in the bathroom?
Yeah.
Like, what did Valerie say when you came out of the bathroom?
Well, she freaked, obviously, but of course the result of that is great for both of us,
right?
Because that was the beginning of a new me.
Now you mentioned your brother. You guys are probably the closest guys in just reading about your history that have ever been in a band.
Well, I mean, how was come to America without not knowing the language and being there for each other made us real close.
Right. Now, how did he feel about this 20 years? Now, was he going through the same problem you had?
He's like 8 years sober.
Okay.
And see, the thing is, I went to a couple of rehabs and this and that, and I'm not knocking rehab at all. It works for a lot of people, but for me and for my brothers also, it has to come from within. You can't have people telling you, hey, it's not good for you, you got to quit. It's killing you, it's ruining your life. Hey, I knew all that, but I wasn't finished drinking yet.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex happened to be finished 8 years before me.
So was he getting on you for 8 years to stop?
No. See, that's just it. He wasn't like that at all.
Huh.
He was not your typical AA kind of guy that would hound you and say, hey, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just said, hey, Ed, you will find yourself. And I definitely did about 7 months ago.
Alex had to be in a tough spot there because you want to help your brother, but you also, he's his own man.
Right.
He's got to do his own thing. Doc Reno here with Denny Somach, the Ultimate Rock Podcast. And I believe we're going to wrap it up. So I just want to tell you, you can tell a friend, check out our website, Facebook page, Instagram, go to ultimaterockpodcast.com. You can email us too. I believe Denny will respond to you.
Sure.
Okay, will you?
Even if you contact me on my Facebook page.
There you go. Hello at ultimaterockpodcast.com.
That's where to reach me.
That's where you can reach Denny and myself. And we'll have another podcast for you real soon. We have some ideas. We've been talking about Springsteen's coming out with a new album on October 23rd. We'll try to get Max Weinberg on if possible. Tom Petty, of course. You're
going to be able to get Tom on?
I'm going to work. Yeah, that would be a miracle. Wildflowers and All the Best coming out October 16th.
We got some good stuff on.
We'll see what we can do there. So, and AC/DC next month coming out with their new album, Power Up. It's exciting to have AC/DC back. Hey, before we cut out of here, one more time, I want to roll that real short clip from Eddie Van Halen and what he had to say, and I'll let Eddie wrap up this podcast. Doug?
If you're a musician, you make music till the day you die. Rock stars come and go.